The Elite Senior Men's Football League in Trinidad and Tobago is in full swing, talking about the TT Premier Football League. And this morning, I have the General Secretary of the TTFA joining us, Amiel Mohammed, as well as the CEO of the TT Premier Football League, Mr. Colin Wharf. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, I mean, the TT Premier Football League is in full swing. We've been seeing the attendance. I mean, I think people have been coming out more and more as it has been progressing. But you tell me, from your perspective, let me start with you, Mr. CEO. How has the league been progressing in your humble opinion?
If someone were to tell me this is where we would be at today when we started, I would not have believed them. So I'm very happy.
Right.
I think the two or three things that had really stood out for me is the fact that football is back. The quality of the football is improving with each game. The sponsors are back. We need some more of them, but they're back. And the spectators are back. Those are the three things that are very impressive. We started the second tier last weekend, and there was many attendees as with the top tier.
Right.
So that augurs very well.
Right. Now, I want to get back into the tiers in a little bit, but I'm also interested in the perspective from the TTFA. In terms of this Premier League, do you agree that there would be now this, the talent pool is just widening now to be able to pass on from from that club level to the national level, for example?
It is critical for the transition and the development of the national team. We've seen Angus Eve, the senior men's national coach, speak about it needing game time and prolonged game time on the field locally. And now with the PFL, they're getting that opportunity. And just like Colin mentioned, game after game, you're seeing the rust starting to be shed, starting to see them quicker, sharper. So it's building up really well.
Right. So what we're saying is that basically this is going to be a pool that people can say, all right, you're going to get, it's like a development stage. So you go from playing intercall and whatever else as you might be playing, and then you get to the next step you're aiming for is to be a part of the PFL.
Correct. Well, and if I can just tag on from what you're saying there, one of the issues that I've raised with the normalization committee is context. So we are running senior football, but the feeder that you refer to, there is no nexus. And you cannot undertake a project of this nature without a strategic context. So one of the things that I've been advocating for is some strategic context. This needs to fit into a broader plan for football.
Right.
Then it starts making sense.
Right.
The other couple of things that I'd like to mention is the quality of the infrastructure.
Right.
That needs to be improved. So when we started Tier 1, we had dust bowls. When we started Tier 2, we had ponds. We've got to get that balance right.
Okay.
And the last thing, let me just add one last thing because I think it's really important. The institutional strengthening, both at the FA and within the clubs, to play at the level that we're desirous of playing, need to be strengthened. Otherwise, it's going to be a gap between desire and capability.
Yeah, but how long do we work on strengthening that before we can say, all right, because I mean, this is like the inaugural one, right? This is the first one we're coming back now after how many years of not having a professional football league on the ground here in Trinidad. And now we have this back. So, I mean, I expect that it would take some time to see, like you say, the rust shed off and people start to get better and then techniques start to improve. Do we have the facilities in place so that we can say we will see improvement, or are we just hoping for the best?
Right. So one of the very specific things is once you've got a clarity in your mind as to where you want to get to,
right,
the elements that support that pursuit have to be put in place. I am one for sort of ripping off band-aids and not talking about 10-year plans and so on.
Right.
Because the world with analytics and technology, etc., you're moving fast. You've got to react. So I think it is possible. With both the investment and the commitment to change, it will happen far more quickly than we anticipate.
Do we have any concern of corruption? Every time you talk about investment, for me, like, it's automatically just how to figure out how we're going to deal with the corruption that comes with it.
That is always going to be there because it pervades every walk of life. And one of the things that surprised me is that I was at a cricket tournament and there was this guy walking around and asking what he was doing there. I'm here dealing with match-fixing exposures. So I presume that sort of review is being done as we speak. I don't know much about it, but my presumption is that corruption is going to be there. It is for us to ensure that we behave in a fashion and operate with people that minimize the exposure to them.
Yeah. And of course, to be as transparent as possible along the way.
Absolutely.
So you've been mentioning the tiers, the different tiers, right? So tier 1 and tier 2. You know, tier 1 has been happening. It started, it would have been, but it's set to finish in June, 17th of June, right? But I know that we used to have the Pro League and the Super League. Is it the same thing in terms of the tier 1 and tier 2? Is it the equivalent?
The Pro League and the Super League are the legacy entities.
Right.
So a lot of the history of Trinidad and Tobago football would have been built on these two organizations.
Right.
We realized that towards the back end of a couple of years that those organizations might have been struggling for various reasons, financial, otherwise. Then we had COVID hitting, which would have knocked everything off its course. So when normalization came in, as well as in consultation with the FIFA League Development Program, we realized that a restructuring needed to be done.
Right.
There was already restructuring done within the TTFA. Now it was a matter of just trying to kind of consolidate what resources we have, bring that stability, and based on those recommendations is where we have the TTPFL.
Right. And so explain to me the difference between tier 1 and tier 2. Is it just a quality thing? Is it a number of teams? Or what's the difference?
It's essentially a Division 1, which will be a top division, tier 1, and then a Division 2, which would be a developmental division, Division 2.
Okay, so that already speaks to what you were talking about earlier in terms of the different stages. So you want to aim to go from intercall to tier 2 to then tier 1, I assume. That's the trajectory.
Well, that's,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that's one particular pathway. A lot of people might decide that that is the pathway for them. Others might decide that they will be able to shoot straight up to tier 1. Maybe they have that quality.
Once they have the skill set.
With it. Maybe they might need a couple more years. Do they develop in a tier 2 team or in a youth setup? That's the joy and the nuance of football.
Right, and I just making sure that we understand that there are levels to it, and you can progress. You can take your time and progress through it, or you could get from one to the next very, very quickly. All right. I do also understand that we have a feeder into some Caribbean cups as well, or regional competitions, the CONCACAF Cup.
Yeah, correct. CONCACAF actually announced yesterday their entire restructuring and rebranding of the competitions. So what we would have is that the top 2 teams in the TTPFL Tier 1, as of the deadline of the 28th of May, which are AC Port of Spain and Defense Force, they have qualified for the CONCACAF Caribbean Cup. That will kick off on the 22nd of August.
Right. And we have teams from around the Caribbean region participating in that, but it's at the club level, right?
Correct, at the club level. So we have a couple clubs from Jamaica who are already qualified, a couple from Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic clubs have been champion for the last couple of years.
Nice.
So right now, Trinidad, it was important that Trinidad and Tobago is back in the mix.
Right.
CONCACAF wanted us to be back in that mix. We wanted to be back in that mix. So now we're there.
And I also understand that there's a shield competition as well that Club Sando is heading to.
Correct. So
Is that the equivalent to the tier 2, or was that one?
now, that Shield competition is the 3rd place in the league according to the deadline. They qualified to the Shield. And the Shield is a singular tournament in St. Kitts and Nevis this year. And the top 2 positions in that Shield actually get spots in the Cup. So potentially we could have 3
teams.
Trinidad and Tobago teams representing the red, white, and black from August to November.
This is fantastic.
And if I can just add to that, when I came on board, this wasn't even part of the conversation.
Right.
So it is just to reinforce the support we've been getting from FIFA and CONCACAF to get us back in the mix, because we were big players some time ago. So we've moved from thinking that this would happen next year to potentially having 3 teams.
And that's what we're talking about. We love to see the growth.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to seeing more of it. Any closing comments before we wrap up this morning?
I would just like to thank the supporters as well as the ministry, the government, just for coming on board, buying into the vision. The FIFA, the CONCACAF, continue to come out and support. Tier 1 might be wrapping up. We have basically the champion will be crowned within, you could say, 10 days or thereabout. But we have the Tier 2 ramping up as well. So it should be a very interesting holiday period.
And you must
and we've made progress. There's a way to go, so we can't sit back and be comfortable with where we're at. So you've got to keep pressing.
Ladies and gentlemen, the TT Premier Football League is in full swing and you want to be a part of it. We're actually going to show you some of the fixtures that's happening this weekend so that you can choose which one you want to go to, or you can go to all as far as I'm concerned. Go out and support the TT Premier Football League. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for joining us this morning.
Thank you very
Thanks a
much
lot.
for having us.
Yeah, man. Take care. All right, guys, check out the fixtures and we take a break and come back with more. Stay tuned.